every palace, and you can see that actually Krishna had expanded himself into 16,000 forms so that he could satisfy all the queens simultaneously. This is, and Prabhupada says in a lecture, he says, so difficult to satisfy one wife. But how Krishna is able to satisfy so many. And then, of course, he was the leader of Dwaraka. So he would go, it's explained, like he would, out of all the palaces, 16,000 palaces, all these Krishnas would come out. They're all walking to the assembly house, the Sudharma assembly house. And as soon as they got close to the assembly house, they all merged into one Krishna. And then Krishna went in the assembly house and he started, doing his political business there. So this is Krishna. So Krishna became, but the point here is that Krishna became subordinate to the love of his devotees because they knew how to please Krishna. And this is the art of being a devotee, understanding how to please Krishna. Of course, we cannot approach Krishna directly. We have to be under the guidance. And Krishna says, if you claim to be my devotee, you're not my devotee. You're one who claims to be the devotee of my devotee. So we have to learn the art of pleasing Krishna. We have to know how to please Krishna by having a relationship with Krishna's devotee. One who is actually a devotee of Krishna can help us. Therefore, we sing every morning, Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado. By pleasing the devotee, by pleasing the spiritual master, we please Krishna. So we have to learn this art of devotional service from a devotee. So, we'll go on with some of the purport here. We got a few minutes. Oh, we have some. Is there any questions? Otherwise, we can read a little bit more. Any questions or comments? We got a microphone. So.
How long did it take Narada to go to all the palaces?
Well, when you cook rice, you take 1 grain, maybe 2 grains, 3 grains, and you feel when it's cooked, then you understand. So Narada understood what was happening by going to how many palaces. It doesn't exactly say he went to everyone, but he had an understanding, and he realized, of course, he's a self-realized soul, so he understood. He realized that Krishna had expanded himself, so he could see. But anytime, anywhere he went, he would see Krishna doing different things in the palaces.
Another question.
That. We have a microphone.
In the verse it says Satyabhama the foremost. I think it says the foremost of the queens.
She was the foremost of the queens. Well,
What are your thoughts on that?
Headed by Satyabhama. The queens headed by.
Yes.
So, in one sense, you got to understand, Satyabhama was kind of spoiled because her father was Satyajit, as we explained. He had all this wealth. He was in control of all this wealth. So she never had any wants, even in her maiden life. So she was expecting to be, by Krishna treated in that same way. I don't know exactly the rasas and everything, and I won't even attempt to speculate on that. But I know that Rukmini had a certain flavor with Krishna when Krishna kind of teased her and say, "Hey, what did you marry me for? I'm just a poor vagabond." I don't know. And then she fainted. Of course, it was Satyabhama, and then she became kind of fiery. And there's a difference in nature between the two. So. Yeah, well, they're all considered expansions of the goddess fortune. Yeah, but she has that mood. Satyabhama's palace was especially bedecked with valuable jewels, and even in the hottest summer, this hottest season of summer, the inside of the palace always remained cool, as if air conditioned. She decorated her palace with various flags, heralding the news of her great husband's presence there. And this is an interesting part of the purport here. If anybody has read Mahabharata, this is really like an amazing section here. Once, along with her husband, it's Krishna, she met Draupadi. and she was anxious to be instructed by Draupadi in the ways and means of pleasing her husband. Draupadi was expert in the affair of pleasing her husband because she kept 5 husbands. The Pandavas and all were very much pleased with her. On receipt of Draupadi's instructions, she was very much pleased and offered her good wishes and returned to Dwaraka. So when she went and heard from Draupadi's instructions how to please her husbands is so filled with incredible realized instructions, basically, and the things that Draupadi did. Not only was her attitude, she says she never ate, she never slept, she never bathed unless her husbands and other had taken their bath or taken their food first, especially, and that she always spoke very sweetly, especially to her mother-in-law Kunti. So these are like some basic things that she did, but some of the amazing things she did. Like she was in charge of all the servants. She was in charge of the whole treasury. She knew all the expenditures. She knew not only did she organize the services of this we're talking about hundreds of thousands of servants in the Maharaj Yudhishthira's kingdom. But she knew them each personally. I thought this was really impressive. She knew them each personally, and she had a personal relationship with each of the servants and the assistants to King Yudhishthira. And she kept track, like I said, she kept track of all the money. Sometimes we see some of my godbrothers, their wives, they just give all their money to their wives. Their wife takes care of all the whole treasury of the household, you know. And it's kind of following the footsteps of Draupadi. She managed the whole expenditure. It was millions and millions of dollars. But anyway, so there was different things. So anyway, so she kept all 5. She kept all 5 Pandavas happy. So Satyabhama's of course in a different situation, but she's still getting those instructions. So yeah, in the beginning, Draupadi, Satyabhama was inquiring, saying, "So how do you do it? Do you use incantations? Do you use different herbs?" She started giving this whole list of things. Do you do special pujas and everything? And Draupadi just basically chastised her. Says, no. The whole thing is attitude of service, was what her basic instruction was. The attitude of service is the pleasing element. So, so we discussed about that Satyabhama instigated her husband to get the parijat flower. The Lord took it by force, just as a common husband secures things to please his wife. As already explained, the Lord had very little to do with so many wives to carry out their orders like an ordinary man, but because the queens accepted the high quality of devotional service, namely administering the Lord all comforts, the Lord played the part of a faithful and complete husband. So we also see Krishna taking the role in his relationship with Arjuna, right? He became controlled by Arjuna's devotion and agreed to be his chariot driver, you know. So Krishna becomes under the control of the love of his devotees. This is a most wonderful quality of Krishna. Any questions? Or supposed to have some time for any more questions or comments?
At the beginning, you said, what should we do when we are being defamed?
Can't hear.
You said, what should we do when we are being defamed?
Oh, what should we do? Yeah.
And you said that Krishna, what's the word?
Krishna's example was something different. Krishna actually took action to protect his name. So sometimes we're also okay. Go ahead. Okay.
Because most
You got to speak into the mic.
mostly we hear that we should just do nothing. Like what's the Shiva? Who was accused of worshiping?
Srivas Thakur.
Srivas Thakur, right? That we should just do nothing and do not defend like we learn from Vaishnava that we have the right to truth. So would you elaborate?
Yeah, so the example she's talking about is Srivas Thakur. At Srivas Thakur's house, every night they would have kirtan to close the doors, and they have ecstatic kirtan. Lord Chaitanya would personally come, dance. So many wonderful things happened in there. But those who were not invited to the kirtan, they became envious, or they became suspectful, and they started spreading rumors that there was all this nonsense was going on in there. And then, so one day, to try to defame Srivas, one Brahmin, so-called Brahmin, he put outside the door of Srivas the articles of worship for Durga, isn't it? And then in the morning, people came to see. Oh, look at this! Srivas Thakur is not a devotee of Krishna; he's a devotee of Durga. He's doing these Durga pujas, which allows so many things. We know it's so many things. You know, you can offer wine, you can offer meat, you can do. So was Srivas Thakur? What did he do? He said, "Just see, you finally realize who I am." You know. He didn't really put up a fight. And then the next day, the Brahmin who did that, he developed leprosy or like that. So that's one standard, that you just accept it and go on. And of course, Srivas Thakur is a powerful and special devotee. This was all part of the Leela. So the truth actually came out, because Srivas, you know, his glories as part of the Panchatattva were well known, and just part of the Sankirtan. The inauguration of the Sankirtan movement was happening in his house, so his glories were eventually manifested. So the example here of Krishna being defamed and Krishna taking action. Let's find out the truth. It was actually an investigation, right? Krishna did an investigation to find out what happened. So what should we do when we find ourselves being defamed or people misunderstanding? Should we just, let's say, Haribol and let it happen? Or should we try to clarify things? I think the point you made, speaking about Varshana Maharaj's statement, was that in the service of the truth, or in the service of the devotee community, we should at least be willing to, or should we are allowed to speak in the service of the truth. But if that doesn't work at a certain point, then maybe the Haribol philosophy would kick in. In other words, if nobody's believing it, ultimately it's in Krishna's hands, right? If you try to explain yourself, but it's still, you can't get through. I mean, some devotees actually create websites. I've seen this. Some devotees create websites just to explain their position about something that has happened like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. They're still explaining. Nobody's listening. They're still explaining, and it's the same old tune. Anyway, I don't want to go into the particular one, but at a certain point, you just have to say, it depends on Krishna. Krishna knows my heart. So your devotee knows. Krishna's in the heart. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridishar arjuna tisati. Krishna's in the heart of everyone. So Krishna ultimately knows our purpose. I think there was from when Akrura was sent by Kamsa to bring Krishna and Balaram to Mathura. What was Kamsa's plan? To kill them in various ways, right? Oh, he had different plans. Kill them with the wrestling. He knew the wrestlers could break these boys in half. He thought the elephant, Kuvalapita. So, Akrura was quite intelligent. He knew what was his mission. He was going there. But in the prayers, Akrura's meditation on the way to Vrindaban, he's thinking, I'm going to see my Lord. I'm going to see my Lord. Krishna knows. It's kind of interesting in the Krishna book. He goes, Krishna knows that I'm a pure devotee. I think it says something like that. But in other words, Krishna knows my heart. So I'm not worried. I'm just going there. I'll be happy just to see Krishna. Of course, as soon as he came into Vrindavan, he saw the footprints of Krishna on the ground. He started rolling in the dust. He didn't care about Kamsa's mission, and he didn't care with maybe any devotees that might have known, hi, Akrura is going to bring Krishna and Balaram to get killed. No, he didn't think about that. He was just thinking, Krishna knows my heart. So sometimes we find ourselves in difficult positions that we have to do something that might not be so palatable. We may have to execute an order that maybe is not so palatable, but if we know that Krishna knows my heart, then I'll carry it out in the mood of a servant. And then there's no reaction. If we don't buy along with maybe the attitude that we were given the instruction in, or the motive behind it might even be. But if we know that Krishna knows my heart, then we're protected. I don't know. What do you think?
I wanted to add one point. I believe Prabhupada says in his purports that one should tolerate insults to one's own self, but not to the devotees or Krishna. So it's like someone is insulting me or defaming me or something, I should tolerate it. But if they're insulting the devotees or blaspheming the devotees or Krishna, then we should say something about it.
Yeah, Prabhupada gives this instructions at different times. One time a devotee said, Prabhupada, what would you do if somebody came to kill you with a knife? Prabhupada said, oh, it's in Krishna's hands. I would just accept it as Krishna's mercy. One time Prabhupada was of course, a famous story. Prabhupada was in Calcutta, and they were bombing, World War II, they were bombing Calcutta. And Prabhupada, all of Prabhupada's friends came in, come on, let's go to the bomb shelter. Prabhupada was honoring Kachoris at the time. He said, no. And Prabhupada was telling the story. He said, I saw those bombs as a form of Krishna. Not a very lovable form, but still a form of Krishna. Then another time they asked Prabhupada, what would you do if somebody came to kill you? Prabhupada said, I would kill him. How could I let them kill Krishna's devotee? So depending on how you see yourself, So here, in this case, also, Krishna was defending his name, because sometimes Krishna, it's explained in the beginning of Krishna book, and in the second part of the Krishna book, that Krishna every morning, he was the example of a perfect householder. He's laying in bed with his queens, and it's Mangal Arati time, and the alarm clock in the form of the crows are going off, right? The roosters, right? They're going off and making their sound, right? And the queens feel disgust because Krishna has to leave them from their warm, comfortable bed and right by their. But Krishna would just get up, and the first thing Krishna would do, he would get up and he'd start meditating on himself. So Prabhupada said, well, this is Krishna setting an example of the perfect householder, but doesn't mean you go and the first thing you do is you start meditating on yourself, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he's showing us meditate on Krishna. So Krishna, in this incident, Krishna was defending his name. He was going to do an investigation to find out why they're saying that he stole the Shamantaka jewel or whatever. Anyway, one has to use their intelligence and guidance. Sometimes we meet. I thought that Maharaj's class the other day was very, very, very enlightening. He was talking about how when we see things, we tend to see things in a very narrow way, just about me and this devotee. But then, if you broaden your, what do you call it, the lens?
Zooming out.
Yeah, you zoom out a little bit and see. Wait a minute. If I act, then you start seeing the devotees and the community, or then you start seeing, you zoom out a little farther, you start seeing how my behavior might affect others, my relationship with Prabhupada and Krishna, you start seeing the whole thing and not just act on the narrow way. So sometimes we're not able to get over the blinders that we have. We're thinking, oh, how's this affecting me? How's this affecting me? Therefore, to widen our, what do you say? Zoom out and see something larger. We have to sometimes, usually we have to get guidance from others who are seeing it in a larger picture. That's why association of more advanced devotees are approaching devotees with our doubts, our questions, We start seeing it differently. We start the same thing that we're seeing in our narrow way. If we question, if we associate, and we hear a different perspective from others who maybe are seeing with a wider zoom. That's why we like to go to, advanced devotees or whatever and hear from them. And we should specifically try to hear from them about our perspective that might be troubling us, And that way we get a further vision, which is the truth. It's the truth. It's the absolute truth. He said that as your zoom expands, you see these things which were so important. What was he? Oh yeah, he was making some great points about how these things can be resolved in this life. I'm going to go talk to you because I said something to you that made you upset. And if I don't, then what happened? Eventually, the big eraser, he called it, right? Remember that part in his lecture? Big eraser. In other words, at the time of death, all these things are kind of like erased. You're fighting with this person, you're fighting with this, somebody did this to you, somebody did that to you. Eventually, they're all erased by the big eraser, death, and the karma's all squared away. Had to start all over again. But we should try to,
But he also said.
try to make amends.
He also said that.
Okay. Microphone.
We will need to continue. If we do not work things out, we will need to continue next life.
The next life, pick up where we left off. Yeah, we don't work it out. So the whole idea is that we want to keep expanding. That's what Krishna consciousness means. Krishna consciousness means to keep expanding our consciousness. When in the 70s, we used to have this thing. We were taking different helpers to try to expand our consciousness. We can't expand our consciousness, but probably the Krishna consciousness is the ultimate consciousness expanding experience. If you start seeing, and Prabhupada gave the example when he came over, the first time he flew. The first time he flew in America, maybe from New York to San Francisco. He said when he got above the clouds and he saw all these little houses, little vehicles, he had a different perspective of what's actually going on. So in the same way, when we become Krishna conscious and we see things from Krishna's perspective, and then we become peaceful. Things are worked out on that level. Any last question, comment, Prabhu? And then it's already...
It still amazes me and sometimes bewilders me how, alone and...
Microphone. Yeah, right to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still amazes me and sometimes bewilders me how alone we are to try to figure and balance our approach to these different problems and issues we may have. Now, obviously, Prabhupada was so advanced, he said he was never without his spiritual master, and obviously the guidance there. A lot of us aren't so in tune with our guru that we have that, or we also don't have their bapu. And a lot of times, in some situations, we don't have the advanced devotees in our sangha that we can even approach. So it's just amazing me how we're often left to our own understanding of our own balance. And obviously, our sadhana and our chanting will open the doors and expand or zoom. But I was just wondering if you could say.
No, that's I don't accept that. I don't think we're alone. We're actually being assisted by the whole Parampara at all moment if we take advantage of it. One time Prabhupada was getting so many letters from devotees about it. They were asking him this question. Finally he says, actually all the answers are in my books. Read my books. And the fact is, we've all experienced sometimes where something's bothering us. If we actually are regularly studying Prabhupada's books or listening to his lectures, amazingly, a perspective will be offered. Prabhupada is with us. He's speaking through his books, through his lectures, but we have to take advantage of it. Just like if we don't, then how can we say? So we're not alone. Prabhupada is giving us, but yes, the Vapu was a temporary manifestation in that sense. Prabhupada's Vapu present, but his Vani is eternal. He's given these books, he's given these lectures, and they are meant to help straighten out our vision, to make the zoom larger. There's so many examples in scriptures about how to see the things in different ways. So and sometimes we don't even know how we are surrounded by advanced devotees. The tendency is to become familiar or to see somebody in a particular light. But actually, devotees are deep. Anybody who's been practicing Krishna consciousness for some years has incredible insights and realizations and have something to share. And it's important that we don't take our association for granted. And therefore we have to learn the art of mining the gems in the hearts of devotees, right? It's like to get gems from the earth, diamonds, you have to go deep in, you have to bust this. Sometimes the devotees are like that. They have something in their heart, but it's not coming out unless they are approached in a certain way. Then amazingly, I mean, this weekend was like filled with amazing realizations by devotees who were speaking of their experience of growing up in Krishna consciousness. So it's there. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. We make ourselves alone because of offenses. We make ourselves isolated because we don't see Prabhupada's instruction. We're not taking advantage of Prabhupada's instructions on a regular basis, or we don't take advantage of association of devotees properly. And then, yeah, I mean, Anyway, I think any other points? Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi, Krishna 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 Hari 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 Ram.